Nobody in that hotel lobby said a word. Not one person. That's the part that stays with you. Not the security guard's voice, not the way he grabbed her arm, not even the look on her face when he did it. It's the silence. 40, maybe 50 people standing there with their luggage and their coffee cups and their rolling suitcases. And not a single one of them moved. They just watched. Like it was television. Her name was Eleanor Voss. 71 years old. 5'3" in the orthopedic shoes she'd started wearing after her hip replacement 2 years ago. She was dressed the way she always dressed when she traveled. Comfortable slacks, a cream-colored cardigan, her late husband's watch on her left wrist, because she still couldn't bring herself to take it off. She carried a canvas tote bag from the public library in Asheville, North Carolina, and she'd filled it with the same things she always filled it with. A paperback novel, a small notebook, a granola bar in case the flight got delayed, and a folder of documents she kept organized with color-coded tabs. The folder was important. It always was, when you were traveling for business. But nobody in that lobby knew that. Nobody knew anything about Eleanor Voss except what they could see, which was an older woman, moving slowly, because her hips still bothered her when the weather was cold, wearing clothes that didn't announce anything to anybody. She wasn't draped in anything that said money. She wasn't surrounded by assistants. She had no entourage, no designer luggage, no visible armor. She was just a woman who walked through the revolving door of the Whitmore Grand Hotel in downtown Chicago on a Tuesday morning in November, set her canvas bag on the marble floor, and waited her turn at the front desk. That should have been enough. That should have been all that mattered. But Marcus Webb had other ideas. He was the head of guest security. A title he wore like a second uniform. All chest and authority, the kind of man who had decided somewhere along the way that his job description included determining who belonged somewhere before they'd had a chance to prove it themselves. He was standing near the concierge desk when Eleanor walked in, and something about her, her pace, her bag, her shoes, her age, her face, made him cross his arms and start watching. Eleanor didn't notice. She was looking at the lobby ceiling, actually, because it was beautiful, vaulted, and painted with a kind of pale gold that reminded her of the train stations she'd seen in Europe the one time she and her husband had gone. 30 years ago, before the kids were born, and money was still something they were chasing together, rather than something they'd long since caught. She thought, not for the first time, that beautiful lobbies were one of the few reliable pleasures left in business travel. You could count on them, whatever happened after. The too small bathroom, the pillow that wasn't right, the noise from the elevator shaft, the lobby usually delivered. She was still looking up when Marcus Webb stepped in front of her. "Can I help you?" His voice had that particular flatness to it, not hostile, not yet. Just positioned, designed to put you on the back foot before you'd said a single word. Eleanor looked at him. She'd encountered this voice before. You don't get to 71 without learning to recognize it. She didn't tense up. She didn't get flustered. She simply said, "I'm checking in. Do you have a reservation?" "I do. Under what name?" she told him. Eleanor Voss. He looked at his tablet. He'd produced one from somewhere, though she hadn't seen him reach for it, and scrolled with one finger, taking his time. Then he looked back up at her. "I don't see anything. Could you check again? It may be under the company name." Voss Advisory Group. He looked down again. Took even longer this time. Then, "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside. You're blocking the entrance." She was not blocking anything. There was 6 feet of clear marble on either side of her. 2 bellhops were moving a cart of luggage 15 feet away, and neither of them came close to her. But Eleanor stepped to the right anyway, because she had not come to Chicago to argue about where she was standing. "My assistant booked this room last week," she said calmly. "The confirmation number is in my bag. Give me just a moment. I'll need to see identification as well." Of course. She was already reaching for her wallet. She produced her driver's license and held it out. He took it, held it, looked at it for longer than any ID check required. "This is a North Carolina license." "Yes. You've come from North Carolina." I have. For what purpose? Eleanor looked at him for a moment. Just a moment. Then she said, I have meetings here tomorrow. I'm staying 2 nights. What kind of meetings? And that was the question that changed the temperature of the room. Not for Eleanor. She remained exactly as she'd been. But the woman standing behind her in line, a younger woman in a blazer with a carry-on suitcase, glanced up from her phone. One of the bellhops slowed down. The woman at the front desk looked over and then looked quickly away. Because the question, what kind of meetings, is not a security question. It's not a protocol question. It's not any kind of question that a hotel security officer is entitled to ask a guest who has given her name, offered her identification, and stated she has a reservation. It is the question you ask someone when you've already decided they don't belong, and you're fishing for a reason to make that official. Eleanor knew it. Everyone in earshot knew it. She said simply, I don't believe that's relevant. Marcus Webb drew himself up. Ma'am, we've had some issues recently with unauthorized individuals attempting to access hotel facilities. I'm sure you understand. I understand that I have a reservation. I've given you my name and my ID, and I've been standing here for 6 minutes. I'd like to check in. I'm going to need you to wait while I verify. Verify what, exactly? She hadn't raised her voice. That's worth noting. Eleanor Voss had not raised her voice once. But something in the way she asked that question, the specific particular clarity of it, made the lobby go a little quieter. The woman in the blazer had fully put her phone away. A man near the elevator, whom Eleanor hadn't noticed, had turned around. Marcus Webb said, Ma'am, if you can't provide sufficient documentation, I've provided my name, my identification, and the name of the entity under which the reservation was made. What documentation are you asking for that I haven't already offered? He opened his mouth, then closed it. He was used to people who got embarrassed, or flustered, or angry in ways that gave him justification. He was not used to this steady, methodical refusal to become anything he could use against her. He said, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises until we can sort this out. There it was. The lobby had gone quiet by then. Not performance quiet, not staged, actually quiet. The way places get when something real is happening and everyone present understands it, but no one knows what to do. The woman behind Eleanor said quietly, Oh my God. The bellhop with the cart had stopped moving entirely. Eleanor reached into her canvas tote bag. She found the folder, cream-colored, because she'd run out of the dark blue ones and hadn't gotten around to replacing them, and she opened it to the first tab. She removed a single document and held it out to Marcus Webb. This is the confirmation email, she said. Booking reference 4471W, 2 nights, the executive suite, Voss Advisory Group. You'll see at the bottom that it was confirmed by your director of corporate accounts, whose name is... I know who our director of corporate accounts is, Marcus Webb said. He didn't look at the document. Then you know that this reservation exists. Ma'am. And you know, Eleanor continued. Her voice still at the exact same register, not louder, not harder, just precise. That there is no protocol in this hotel or any other that requires a guest to explain the nature of their business meetings to a security officer before being permitted to check in. Someone near the elevator started to say something and then stopped. Marcus Webb looked at her. She looked back. She did not look away. He said, I'm going to need to speak with my supervisor. Please, Eleanor said. Take your time. She put the document back in her folder, closed it, set her canvas bag on the floor by her feet, and waited. Marcus Webb walked away toward the back office. He moved the way men move when they know they've said too much, but aren't ready to admit it. Brisk, purposeful, with an energy that was trying to look like authority and mostly just looked like retreat. Eleanor watched him go. Then she turned to the woman in the blazer behind her and said, I'm sorry about the wait. The woman shook her head. Don't apologize. Please. The front desk clerk, a young man in his mid-20s named Peter, according to his name tag, had been watching all of this with the particular expression of someone who knows the right thing to do and isn't sure they're allowed to do it. When Eleanor turned back toward the desk, he stepped forward. Miss Voss, he said quietly, I can pull up your reservation right now if you'd like. I would appreciate that very much, Peter, he typed. His face did the thing faces do when they find exactly what they were looking for. A small, quick settling of relief. Executive suite, he said. 2 nights. Voss Advisory Group. Everything's here. He paused. I apologize that it took this long to get to that point. That's all right. It really isn't, he said, and he meant it. She could tell. She was filling out the registration card. She still liked to fill them out by hand, a habit left over from decades of doing it that way. When the door to the back office opened, Marcus Webb came back out. He was walking differently now, still purposeful, still moving like a man in a uniform, but with something gone out of him, some weight or certainty that had been there before. He stopped a few feet away from Eleanor. Behind him, half a step back, was a woman. Her name, Eleanor would learn later, was Catherine Ossie. She was the regional director of operations for the Whitmore Group, responsible for 11 properties across the Midwest, based in Chicago, and had been in the back office that morning for a quarterly review meeting with the general manager. She had come out because Peter had quietly sent a message to the front office when he pulled up the reservation, and she had come out because she recognized the name. Not Eleanor's face. She hadn't met Eleanor in person, only corresponded by email. But the name Voss Advisory Group was not unknown to her. It was, in fact, the consulting firm that had been hired by the Whitmore Group's board of directors to conduct an operational assessment of 6 of their 12 properties, with recommendations to follow. The assessment was ongoing. Eleanor was the one running it. Eleanor Voss was not just a guest. She was the person whose report, due in 6 weeks, would help determine which of those 6 properties would receive continued investment and which would not. Catherine Ossie looked at Eleanor. Then she looked at Marcus Webb. Then she looked at the lobby, the bellhop frozen with his cart, the woman in the blazer, the man near the elevator, Peter at the front desk, the 8 or 10 other people who had quietly assembled as observers of something they hadn't expected to witness that morning, she said, and her voice was very quiet. Marcus. He turned to look at her. Something in her face made him stop completely. This, Catherine said, is Eleanor Voss, of Voss Advisory Group. She let that sit there for a moment, in the air, in the lobby, in front of everyone. She is a guest of this hotel, and she is here on behalf of our parent company. Marcus Webb had gone very still. I'd like you to go back to the security office, Catherine said, and wait for me there. He went. He didn't say anything. He just went. Catherine turned to Eleanor. And Eleanor, for the first time that morning, felt something shift in her chest. Not anger, not vindication, but something quieter. Something that had to do with being seen after being deliberately looked past. Mrs. Voss, Catherine said, I am deeply sorry. There is no version of this morning that should have happened the way it did. No, Eleanor said. There isn't. I'd like to personally ensure that your stay, Catherine. Eleanor said the name gently, not unkindly. I'll be fine. I've stayed in worse hotels under worse circumstances, and I'll write my report the same way I always do, based on what I observe, the full picture, not just the last 10 minutes of it. She picked up her canvas bag. But what happened here this morning was not about me. It would have happened to whoever walked through that door looking the way I look. And that is worth examining. Catherine nodded. She looked like she understood, and Eleanor believed that she did. Peter handed over the key cards. Eleanor took them, picked up her tote, and started toward the elevator. The lobby was still quiet. The woman in the blazer was watching her go. So was the man near the elevator, who moved aside and held the door open without being asked. Thank you, Eleanor said to him. Of course, he said, and then, after a brief pause, I'm sorry no one said anything sooner. Eleanor looked at him. He was maybe 40, business casual, the kind of face that would have been easy to forget if not for the fact that he was the only person in the lobby who had said the exact right thing. That matters, she told him, that you said it now. The elevator doors closed. Upstairs, in the executive suite with its view of Lake Michigan gray and enormous in the November morning, Eleanor Voss set her canvas bag on the luggage rack, took off her coat, and sat down on the edge of the bed. She took her husband's watch off her wrist. She always did this when she arrived somewhere, some habit of settling in, and set it on the nightstand. She sat there for a while, not because she was upset, or not only because of that, but because she had learned, over 71 years, that certain moments deserve to be sat with, not rushed past, not folded up and put away in the place where you keep the things that hurt. She thought about Marcus Webb, about all the Marcus Webbs she had encountered, in airports and boardrooms and hotel lobbies over the course of 40 years in business. Men, and sometimes women, who had made up their minds about her before she opened her mouth, who had seen a certain age, a certain face, a certain set of clothes, and decided that what they were looking at did not require their respect, did not require the basic good faith of being assumed to belong somewhere until proven otherwise. She thought about how tired she was of proving it, not because she couldn't, she'd always been able to, but because it never seemed to stop. 71 years old, 4 decades of building something from nothing. And still, in a hotel lobby in Chicago, she was being asked to explain why she was there. She opened her notebook. She wrote down what had happened. Date, time, the name Marcus Webb, the name Peter, the name Catherine, O.C. She wrote down. The bellhop stopped. The woman in the blazer put her phone away. The man by the elevator said sorry. She wrote down. Nobody said anything for a long time, and then one person did, and it helped. She wrote those things down because her report would include them. Not in the accusatory way, not in the way of someone with a score to settle, but because what had happened in that lobby was not an isolated incident. It never was. It was the kind of thing that happened in lobbies and waiting rooms and front desks everywhere, every day, to people who looked like she looked and did not happen to have a consulting contract in their canvas tote bag. And the absence of that contract should not have mattered. The presence of it should not have been what changed the temperature of the room. That was the thing. That was always the thing. Respect is not a reward for significance. It is not something you earn by proving you belong, or by producing the right folder, or by waiting long enough for the right person to come out of the back office and say your name. It is something that should have been there from the moment. Eleanor Voss walked through the revolving door and looked up at the gold-painted ceiling. It cost nothing to give her that. And the absence of it, in the end, cost Marcus Webb everything. I think about Eleanor sometimes, on the days when I wonder whether any of it matters. Whether the people who look through you instead of at you will ever learn, or whether the world just keeps turning the way it always has, grinding down the ones who deserve better. And then I remember the elevator, the man who held the door. The 4 words he said, "I'm sorry no one did," and the way Eleanor looked at him like those words were something real. Because they were, because they are. We don't always get to be the person who steps forward in the lobby. Sometimes we're frozen. Sometimes we don't understand what we're watching until it's already over. But there is always a moment before the door closes. A moment when you can say the true thing, the right thing, the human thing. That moment is a choice. And the choice is yours.